How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my of the year videos. Now last year I only did it for games because back then I was only talking about video games, but music and film and movies and all that stuff mean a lot to me as well, especially music. So I'm here with you today talking about 5 great albums from 2016. And I recently did a video about an album, so we're really digging into the music stuff soon. It's going to be good. It's going to be a good time. So I hope you enjoy this completely unscripted ramble about 5 albums that I enjoyed this year. I have one honorable mention like I did last time with the games one. This time I did listen to the album. It's not like I wasn't able to listen to the album. The honorable mention goes to A Moon-Shaped Pool by Radiohead. I just wanted to give a shout out to Radiohead because I fell in love with them this year, and their music is really good overall. But the thing is, the King of Limbs prior record was and I think everyone thought it was and so it's good to hear that they're coming back with another unique sound, something different, something exciting. So I really like the album. It was really good. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to Radiohead before I go into my 5 picks here. I think these 5 picks are pretty predictable for the most part. I think people who are into these particular genres would say that they're one of the best records that came out in those genres, but there are also going to be some absences, obviously, because it's 5. So, if you would like to tell me your favorite records of the year, definitely let me know below. There's obviously a lot of music that came out, and people have a lot of different opinions on music. Music is a very subjective thing, so I can understand why people might not choose the ones I choose, or why people might choose something different. So once again, shout out to Radiohead, but I gotta get on with the real legit list. Now, just like the games list, this is in order, right? So the 5th one will be my 5th favorite, and it goes up to my number 1 favorite. But just like how, any sort of medium can be incredibly diverse, this list is incredibly diverse. It features music from all sorts of different genres. So if you prefer a particular genre of music, then just because something is higher on the list doesn't mean that the one below it is substantially lower. These are all 5 fantastic records worthy of being considered for Record of the Year. So with all that said, let's get into the actual list. Number 5 is going to be Swans, the Swans record that came out this year, The Glowing Man. Now, I actually saw Swans in concert this year, earplugs and all, and it was quite a memorable experience. They really only played stuff from The Glowing Man, with a few from To Be Kind. It was a really neat show. Obviously, this is completely unrelated to the record, but I think one thing that I learned from that show is how the sound of Swans, especially modern Swans, with these last 4 albums. I'll include the first one, the first revival sort of album. But I think most people consider this a trilogy with The Seer, To Be Kind, and The Glowing Man, but I'll include that first one as well. The sound of these albums just completely envelop you, and that's why they play the music so loudly. I think it's because it's such they take one melody and it just keeps going and going and going, but it's what they do around that melody that makes it so interesting. It's how they continue to change things just a little bit to maintain your interest. This music doesn't bore you. It goes on for a very long time. Don't get me wrong, but it refuses to get boring, and that's what makes Swans such an interesting group. I think I like To Be Kind a bit more than this one, but I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. So this album's called The Glowing Man. I guess maybe you can kind of derive it from the title. It's hard to say, but it has a very spiritual undertone, if that makes sense. And I don't mean like deeply religious or anything like that, but there's sort of like this constant battle going on throughout the album between like more angelic, like holy sounds, and then more sinister, like corruptive sounds, and it isn't like, really evil or like satanic or anything like that, but it's just like you have this like pure holiness, and then it slowly gets corrupted by some dissonance, and then it fades back away, and then it comes back again, and it's just really interesting from a musical sonic level, this album in that respect. I think in some ways though, I think someone who isn't accustomed to this sort of music is more likely to get bored with this album than To Be Kind, which is why I like To Be Kind more, I think. I've been going back and forth on this, but I don't know. I like Frankie M. Frankie M's a really good track. It's my favorite track. I'm gonna give like a favorite track on each of these as well. Maybe with the exception of number one. I don't think I can. I'm still deciding on a track for number one, but we'll get there. Frankie M. The thing that I like about it is and this kind of sounds dumb, but it's like the vocals play such a lesser role in this album than To Be Kind and Swans. The vocals don't really play that much of a role anyway. But I like some of the lyrics in Frankie M. I like what he's talking about. I don't know. I just overall like the sound of this album. It's really hard to describe what Swans is, but I think the way I put it earlier is just the best way to put it. It's just they introduce a melody and then they just stick with it for an entire song, but it's what happens around it, how they constantly just put little twists on it that make Swans interesting. And I also like how throughout these past 4 albums, every album has had its unique sound to it. So even though they focus on, just single melodies throughout most of these songs, I still, find it compelling that they managed to focus it to a particular kind of sound or kind of focus throughout the album. I think this album does that focus best out of all of them. So I really enjoyed it. Heavily recommended. The next one is by far the best pop record of the year, Lemonade by Beyonce. I realized I just put the order wrong in my little note, because all I have on the notes, right, is just like the artist, an album, and then like a favorite track, but I realized I flipped it. And I think, I'm not gonna, it was completely a typo by me, but I think the album, like Lemonade itself, is more important than Beyonce in this record. I mean, her prior record was titled Beyonce. It was titled after her, because the album's about her. And because the last album was about her, this album comes out, and this is a really, somewhat dark album at times, talking about, what, and to be completely blunt, what a black woman goes through, in times of relationship, in times of struggle, in everyday life, and all these sorts of things. And people were thinking that this was Beyonce talking about Beyonce, but I don't think this is Beyonce talking about Beyonce. I think this is Beyonce talking about some other person, and that other person is a character that she created to deliver this message to her audience, right? And I think in that respect she did that very well. I'm not a pop music fan. I'm normally, don't really pay attention to most of that. I listen to a few singles that come out and then hate them and then ignore it. And with certain singles by certain artists, Meghan Trainor, it's making me really dislike the modern pop scene. But there's sometimes these things come out and they just surprise you. Uptown Funk was a great single. Bruno Mars surprised me with a lot of the stuff he's done, although his album this year wasn't that good. And this one here probably surprised me more than anything else in the pop scene since I've been listening to pop music. So in that respect, Beyonce killed it. This album has deeper meaning other than like, I want to get laid, or I want to go to the club, or, I broke up, but I don't care because I'm an independent woman who, doesn't care about that, even though I do care, indecisiveness. I don't know. A lot of those morals just keep coming back in pop music. But anyway, back to this album. The reason why this album works is even though it talks about some of those topics, it adds a very human perspective to it, and it takes it in a very specific angle, and it uses that angle extremely well throughout the album. And there are times when Beyonce does throw in some personal elements, and I think a lot of people like the track Formation for that reason. But my personal favorites Hold Up, just because, man, that it just gets stuck in your head. Like that beat just gets stuck in your head. And I guess because this album's a visual album, I also can't get the image out of my head of the character Beyonce created, played by Beyonce in the yellow dress, just with a baseball bat, not giving any it just not, and she just doesn't give a shit. I don't know. I really like that track, but the whole album is really compelling, really interesting, and both, uses good pop music sensibilities. Overall, a really solid album. I heavily recommend it. The lyrics here are fantastic. The songwriting's fantastic. The production is fantastic. And I think especially people who identify with Beyonce, I know that was my phone that went off because I didn't silence it. People who identify with Beyonce on a true identity level, I think will get the most out of this record, but that doesn't stop me from enjoying it myself. Selfish old me, enjoying everything. So my number 3 album is Terminal Redux by Vector. It's the only metal album on the list, and this year sucked for metal, dude. Like, metal is my jam. That's what I was brought up on. In high school, I had a friend, and he's still a really good friend of mine, and he just was addicted to metal, and he still is, but, his tastes have changed. A lot of the music he showed me back then, he doesn't even like anymore. I mentioned in my Saint Anger video that the band that got me into heavy metal was 3 Inches of Blood, and now he's like, oh, they're not even that good, You gotta listen to that doom metal. But, I would say I pretty much like most forms of metal, but it was really just kind of a shame all around. There wasn't anything really fantastic that came out this year. A lot of people will point to Metallica, but that album is not that good. Sorry. Just because Metallica made it doesn't make it good. I think Saint Anger proves that, and Death Magnetic, for that matter, proves that. Megadeth album wasn't that good either. But there's some, really surprising albums from unknown artists that really came and shined through, and Vector was definitely one of them. I never heard of Vector before this album came out. I was at the record store with a friend, and he was like, the album art looks cool. And it does look cool. The album art looks fantastic. I mean, I'm guessing I'm putting it in the video, so look at it. It looks fantastic, right? But the thing is that the album sounds as great as that album art looks. It actually lives up to the promise. I mean, album art back in the day was supposed to sell the record to you. So a lot of times album art looks fantastic and you play the record and it doesn't sound anything like the album art looks. And I know that sounds weird, but if you're going from an artistic standpoint, I hope you'll understand where I'm coming from when I say that. It's kind of like in video games, since I know a lot of people who watch this channel come from video games, where it's just like a lot of really great games, their box arts just have dudes with guns on the cover. Like, that doesn't tell you anything about the game, and that actually downsells the game. What happens in music a lot of the time is that they oversell the album with its album art, right? Is that the album art looks fantastic, but the album itself doesn't sound that good. And that's disappointing, I guess. So here, the sound is fantastic, and it's just as, otherworldly as the album cover implies, I guess. But I think the better way to describe this album is just complete insanity. It's, the friend I mentioned earlier would consider this album to be too progressive, but I don't think progressive in this instance is a bad thing. I don't think it's too complex, but I think that complexity overwhelms the listener, and I think that complexity, that's intentional. That overwhelming feeling is intentional. You don't know where this album's going. This album is dragging you all the way through, and you're going in for the ride. It's strapping you in. You're going. It changes. It unlike Swans earlier on, which, completely different style of music, obviously. This album never repeats the same melodies. I mean, there's sometimes, but it's not, it's not one to hesitate to take, to change things up, to take things in a new direction, and constantly throw you off guard. And that's what I like about it. It's just an endless ride. It's not something that you would listen to in the car necessarily because you're just going crazy. But if you want to sit down and listen to this whole thing, you will be exhausted by the end of it. And I like that feeling. I think that was the intention, and it surely was a fantastic ride. My favorite track here is Pteropticon, assuming I pronounced that right. It's like PT, so I'm guessing it's like pterodactyl or something like that. Pteropticon, and I like it because it really exemplifies what I was just talking about best. It really changes up melodies all the time, changes time, changes its tempo, changes everything throughout the entire course of the song. Really, really solid track, and the album overall is just fantastic. The production here is really good as well. The guitars sound really clean, which sometimes when you're going with this really fast-paced metal, this fast-paced progressive thrash metal, sometimes it can all blend together and just kind of sound like a giant like fuzz, if that makes sense. It doesn't do that here, and everything sounds really clear, which is almost a relief in some ways. So everything sounds really clean. Vocals are obviously really growly, but they sound clean in the recording sense. They're not clean in the tonal sense. I don't know. Everything just really clicked here. Vector spent a lot of time working on this record, and it paid off. And I really like what they did here musically. So definitely go check that out. Now, these last two are the ones that I kept going back and forth as to which one was the record of the year, because they're both fantastic, and they both have real-world implications, and they're just 2016 albums in every sense of the word. Both of these albums, and I guess this might sort of spoil number one when I tell you what number two is, both of these albums feature artists who have since deceased. Both of these albums tribute those artists incredibly well, and both of these albums are relevant in the political, social, and just historical landscape of this year. With that said, number two is Black Star by David Bowie, which I think is probably his best album, which, he's released a lot of fantastic music. That's really hard thing to say when considering Ziggy Stardust, especially, but all of his albums are fantastic for the most part. And even his most recent records before Black Star were really good. I don't know. Bowie is a legend in the musical landscape. And this was his send-off. And the cool thing, the sort of dark thing as well, the album in its entirety is really dark. It's not radio friendly whatsoever. It features very basic guitar and production overall. But the dark thing about it is its theme in itself is death. Its theme is what happens when you die, what it feels like when you know you're going to die, what it feels like to think about your legacy, what it means, what life after death is, in both, in some ways a religious aspect, but he doesn't really go into that much, which I'm thankful for, but more so in a legacy, what your impact is perspective. My favorite track here is the title track, the first track, Black Star, and it just, the themes throughout this record, like the theme of him being the Black Star, the theme of, like I said, he just deals with death throughout the entire record. It's what is his legacy. I know I'm going to pass. What does that mean? Because there are a lot of somewhat pretentious albums out there by artists who are like, oh, look how successful I am, but that's not the vibe you get here. The vibe here is a very depressing one. It's closure is what it really is when it comes down to it. That's the best way to put it. It's an album that you need to listen to all the way through. It's not an album you listen to when you're just walking around or driving in your car. Maybe in certain contexts driving in the car, I don't know, but it's not something you just throw on that lead single and that's it, it's a very meaningful record. It's a very deep record, and it's something that, couldn't, and this might sound weird because most music is released in albums nowadays, but it's something that could only exist in a record, right? There's not much I really have to say about it in that sense. I think it's just something you need to listen to, and then you understand it. I wish there was more I could say, but that's pretty much all I can give you. So I just heavily recommend this album. I think it's Bowie's best. Ziggy Stardust is fantastic. So if you haven't listened to that, I heavily recommend you do that. But in terms of albums of the year, I wouldn't be disappointed if anyone picked this one. I wouldn't be disappointed if anyone picked any of these. But wow, this album is wow. So you might have figured out what number one is. Obviously, there are a lot of artists that passed this year. Leonard Cohen was another one who released an album this year. But I have to give number one to A Tribe Called Quest. We got it from here. Thank you for your service. And that album title, was suggested by the late Phife Dawg himself. Which the other band members don't even know why he suggested it, what the title means. They don't get it, but that's what he wanted the title to be, so that's what the title is. A lot of people, when they announced this album, were like, oh, they're just gonna sample, Phife Dawg from prior albums and just throw them on there, but what happened really is they performed for the first time in, over a decade, last year in 2015, and they felt the creative vibes and they wanted to record another album. And so they did. They worked on it. They worked on verses, they worked on some lines, they got some production going, and then Phife Dawg passed, and so the album then turned into a tribute for Phife Dawg, sort of around the verses that he made. And it's just so incredible how well it pieced together. It's as if he's still around today, but he's not. And the album wasn't complete. It wasn't anywhere near complete from what I've read at the time of his passing. But they pieced the album together based off of what he, what he rapped, what he said, and what was already planned. And it turned out so incredibly well in every respect. I think the highlight, like I said, I'm right now, I can't decide on a favorite track, but I'm going to give you a few highlights for you, okay? The first track I want to talk about is actually the last track. The last track is called The Donald. And given the political nature of the lead single off of this album, We the People, most people would logically assume that The Donald is about President Donald Trump, or President-elect Donald Trump at this point in time. And I, not knowing my full-on Tribe history, having only gotten into hip-hop in the last year or so, assumed the same. But then I played the track. I learned that, Phife Dawg also goes by the name Don Juice. The song, this is the song. The song, I swear, listen to it. It starts with a rap by Phife Dawg, just a full verse about his skill at rapping. It was supposed to be maybe a song where it was like everyone talked about how skilled they are or whatever like that, because there's also a theme within this album of passing, thank you for your service, A Tribe Called Quest, we're done, we got it from here, as in the next generation has got this. It's a passing of the torch album as well. So I'm assuming that's what the foundation of the track was, but they turned that track, they took his verse, I'm getting chills, and that sounds so weird, but I am. They turned his verse talking about, his skill in rapping, clearly intended for a different song, and make that the centerpiece for a tribute song to him. It works so well. I can't stress how well it works. And throughout the rest of the thing, I believe it's Busta Rhymes that does the thing, because they have similar heritage or something like that, and it's like Phife Dawg, you've been one with a crew, Phife Dawg, something like that. And they basically use that as the backing, and then they throw the verse over top, and then they just have Tip, and then like some of the other can't remember his name. I don't know my rap artists that well. Feel free to kill me in the comments. But then they go Don Juice, and that's all the song is. It centers around him, and then the first is this. It's just so well laid out, and it's the best tribute track for an artist I've ever seen. It's so phenomenal in every respect. And I've read online about people who are fans of A Tribe Called Quest back when they, back in the days of the Low End Theory, Midnight Marauders, and people that were fans of them all the way back then and were disappointed by their previous two albums, which kind of fell off because they were starting to have their inner qualms and stuff. And they, that song, brought them to tears or really, affected them emotionally. And I can see how it would do that for people that were fans of the band for so long and really, missed this legend of an artist who did so much for the hip-hop landscape along with his fellow tribe members. So I absolutely adore that last track. I also have to give a shout out to the track Black Spasmodic. I really like the production there. I like the little... I mean, it's not ska, but like that's the first thing I think of because I'm an idiot. But like that kind of melody. I love the whole song. I love the verses. I love everything in it. This album, it's fantastic. The lead single off of it is the track I always go back to, We the People. It's the political track. But it's the track that just, the thing is, the album is set up. I'm completely disjointed. I was like this with my pick for the best game of the year, so I'm sure I'll do that with, if I do a TV film one, I'm not sure. I haven't watched a lot of film this year. But if I do, I'm sure this will happen, the thing that I'll probably talk about for it. But I'm sorry for being so disjointed. But the whole point of the album, right, is it starts by talking about the issue itself, the issue of modern day systemic oppression of minorities, right? Racism as it exists today, and some of those societal systemic issues, right? It isn't necessarily anymore. I'm going to try and explain this from the perspective of the album rather than my own perspective. The point the album's trying to make is it isn't necessarily just someone, going down the street and calling someone a name anymore. It's more of a systemic thing. The first track, Space Program, says there ain't a space program for, I'm not going to say the word. There ain't a space program for, I'm not going to say the word. And then it says, but then afterwards, then it says, gotta get it together for mothers, gotta get it together for fathers, gotta get it together for brothers, for mothers and fathers and dead, N-word. And so it's a call to unity to address this problem that's really important, because the only way that problem will be solved is through community, is through getting together, and through also passing this protest anthem on to the next generation. The song Disgeneration talks about that. And then kids. I love the track Kid. Well, first off, We the People's fantastic. All you black folks, you must go. All you poor folks, you must go. Muslims and gays, boy, we hate your ways. All you bad folks, you must go. Clearly a jab at the current president-elect, but also a jab at people who, the alt-right, or people who are saying that just all these people gotta go without really considering the fact that, hey, they're people too, and most of them, illegal immigrants, whatever, a lot of them, they had to be here for a reason, or they're kids who were born to illegal immigrants, so it's not necessarily their fault, or even they've lived here and their families have lived here for generations and they're still being oppressed anyway and being assumed as being immigrants even though they're not. Or, they're being oppressed for their religion or their orientation or whatever, right? And so the whole point, it's a jab at people who are blind to those issues from their perspective. And then, but then it uses the We the People, it uses the Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence, We the People, as the hook anthem for the thing. It's so good. So then it follows up that with Disgeneration, Kids, I don't remember the full track list, But those tracks basically are talking about like making sure the next generation understands the breadth of the problem. Kids, don't you know that all this shit is fantasy? All this shit that you could believe in. The whole rap image of for lack of a better term, blunts and bitches, or being rich, or bling bling. All that is a fantasy because these struggles still exist. And this is my interpretation also. I have to mention that this is my interpretation. There's obviously other ways to interpret this album. And I'm sure people who identify more closely with that scene, that culture, that race, and that ethnicity as well would probably derive a deeper or more complex meaning than the one I'm deriving. But yeah. I don't know. This album's just fantastic. I could keep going, but I'm already 31 minutes in. I don't want to bore you. And I also, at the same time, this is not, a deep analytical critique of these albums, right? Like, this is a recommendation. I made 3 Minute a while ago, a good old while ago, because the whole point was that, just brief recommendations, because I'm giving you more than 3 minutes in a review, then you might as well just listen to things. So that's what I'm going to tell you now. You might as well just listen to these albums, because they're all fantastic. I clearly, love them because I talked so long about them. Some more than others, some more complicatedly than others, and some more in depth than others. But I did that for a reason. I want you to enjoy these records. They're all fantastic. But the Tribe album is fantastic. Wow, just phenomenal on all accounts. But yeah, that's all I got. So thank you so much for watching. Go listen to these records. And I promise, even though I keep saying on Twitter, the next video is the Wario video, but I wanted to get this one done quick because of how my schedule for the next few weeks is lining up. It seems better that I do this and just get it done and then do the Wario video stuff then. So that's what I'm going to do. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you around. I'll talk to you around, chillin', memeing, listen to music forever. Goodbye. Yeah, goodbye. That's it.